Like this, we're looking at a coach. He's like, he wants to be Tom Izzo, and he's coaching Alabama. Like that's who Nate Oats is.
Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com, and we just witnessed history in our state. In Coleman Coliseum, we saw number 1 versus number 2, the first regular season matchup in the history of the SEC between teams ranked 1 and 2. And it happened, like I said, inside Coleman Coliseum in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, if you can believe it. Alabama versus Auburn. Auburn won 94-85. And our guest today called it the type of game that people will remember for a long time. And joining us now is AL.com sports columnist Joe Goodman. Joe, welcome.
Happy to be on the pod.
Hey, man, welcome back. First question, right? A lot of hype around this game. Did it live up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Listen, the buzz inside Coleman at the beginning of the game and really throughout and even, into the second half, it was incredible. It was a wonderful atmosphere for college basketball. It was the type of atmosphere that, you can only dream about as a sports reporter. Especially for like a regular season type game. And, to me, it did live up. It did live up to it. I know that Alabama fans aren't going to agree with that, but this is a good Alabama team. They just had an off night at a couple of positions, and Auburn had a lot to do with that. But Alabama's really good. They're the number 2 team in the country. Everything is kind of relative these days when it comes to college basketball. People are complaining about this team, but like this team's really good.
Yeah, they are. I mean, you had a really good column about this that people should read, and we're going to get to that in just a sec. But I want to share a stat with you. Our friend Kevin Skarbinski shared this stat. It says the Alabama-Auburn rivalry under Bruce Pearl and Nate Oats, they have now played 11 times. Alabama has won 6. Auburn has won 5. But the total points between the two, Auburn 910, Alabama 908. So wow, it's as close as a rivalry can get, like literally down to the number. I mean, Oats and Pearl are clearly 2 of the best coaches, not just in the SEC, but in the country. Joe, how do you size up this rivalry right now? Like, is this one of the best you've ever seen in your lifetime? And do you think that either team has the advantage right now?
It was really interesting that one of the PR lackeys came by during the game and was like, listen, just to let y'all know, there's not going to be any handshaking after the game. The coaches are going to shake hands, and the players, we're gonna go hard pass on that. So,
that wasn't true. They did shake hands.
It doesn't get any better than that, I guess.
But they did shake hands. That, like, you saw the end with Aiden Holloway. They were giving him hugs and, like, dapping him up and all that. Like,
yeah,
Pearl
but I guess that they were kind of preparing for that. Yeah. Also, at the beginning of the game, Chris Stewart's kind of lead in to everything before the game started. I mean, that really set the tone. I really, really enjoyed that. I mean, why shy away from the rivalry? Chris Stewart just went right in and was like, we don't like them. Right. They don't like us. Let's go.
We're going to show them that the state bleeds crimson, right? Like that was his whole thing. You're right. It did set a good tone. It was funny. But in terms of it leaning in either direction, Joe, like, do you think that like Bruce Pearl's Auburn program is better than Alabama's or vice versa at this point? Like, or is it dead even?
No, Auburn's better right now. 6 of their top 7 scorers are seniors, and they have 6 guys who are in double figures.
I don't know. I don't necessarily mean as a team, because again, you're right. Like Auburn proved that they were the number 1 team in that game. But I mean, as a program, like moving forward, like the immediate future, like who do you trust more? Bruce Pearl's Auburn program, Nate Oats' Alabama program, or do you think that they're pretty, like I said, even at this point?
They're back and forth.
Yeah,
it's going to be an every year type of situation, especially the way it is now with NIL. you go out and you rebuild a team and you hope for the best. Like that's the way it is. Listen, if Alabama had Latrell Wrightsell playing right now, they would probably be better than Auburn. I mean, you can make that case. He was so good at defense. I mean, Rylan Griffin is starting for Kansas right now. Like, if he were on this team, what would they look like? Aaron Estrada last year did not get enough credit. I mean, he was a great college guard. And so, now they got Mark Sears, and they're asking him to do a lot. And LeBaron Filan is young, and he's just coming back from an ankle injury. I mean, that's just where they are right now. They're still a really good team. They can still beat Auburn. They can still go to the Final Four. They just need to kind of get some things working properly. Smooth it around the edges, offensively and defense. They got all these parts. They just can't really fit them together right now.
Yeah, I think there are a few little like microcosms during the game, little sequences that reflected that, right? Where it's like you're right there, but you're just not quite enough yet. Like when I saw a stat that said Alabama was 3 of 12 when the game was in within 3 points against Auburn. Like if it was tied or like they're only a 3 away, then Alabama just started shooting poorly. Auburn had an answer for literally everything. I mean, it was late in the game. Alabama had a chance to win the game. It was tied with like 6 minutes to go or so. Alabama had all the momentum, and then Auburn comes up and hits to pull up 3 and just shuts Coleman up, right?
Well,
and like they just had an answer. So Alabama did
when teams trail games the whole game, generally speaking, they make a run and then they won't have anything left in the tank.
Well, that's because the Auburn the hole was too big, right? Even though Alabama was able to close in, Auburn started the game 9-0, right? Janai Barum comes out and hits 2 straight threes early in the game, sets a really interesting tone for how Auburn might play the game, but also how they might shoot and how Alabama might defend. Because like you said, you got to give Auburn a lot of credit. I mean, people say Alabama shot poorly. It was an off day. They were 5 of 26 from 3. That was 19% to Auburn's 40 in the game. But Auburn was doing things on the defensive end that was troubling Alabama. I mean, it was rough. And then Auburn on the other side, they were getting open threes and they were hitting them. So is it possible that Bruce Pearl just outcoached Nate Oats in this game?
Oh, absolutely. Nate Oats got outcoached. Yeah. But look, not enough is said about the development of the players at Auburn. I mean, if you were going to tell me when Janai Barum showed up at Auburn several years ago that he was going to be able to go into Alabama and hit 50% of his 3-pointers, I mean, I wouldn't have believed that. And Chaney Johnson, he also hit 50% of his 3-pointers in that last game. So, those two bigs shooting 50% from 3, like, you're just not going to beat that team that night, okay? When the score got close, Auburn's perimeter defenders really clamped down. That's why Alabama couldn't make baskets under pressure situations. It's because Denver Jones is a great defender. And that team doesn't even have a true point guard. Like Alabama has more of a true point guard than Auburn does. Like Chris Moore starts for Auburn. He played 7 minutes in the entire game, and he was plus 17 in his plus minus. So, I mean, that just goes to show you, like, you don't need a guy on the ball all the time to affect the game. And that's kind of what Alabama's missing in Latrell Wrightsell.
Yeah, I mean, he was also a double-digit scorer. He averaged more than 10 points a game. Great shooter, great free throw shooter for that matter. Alabama struggled from the free throw line on Saturday. They struggled at the rim, too. I mean, Oates criticized the shot selection. He noted that Mark Sears and Grant Nelson went 7 for 16 at the rim. Alabama was 14 of 30, I think, on layup attempts in the game. I want to sort of shift into that criticism that Oates had of Mark Sears in particular. You wrote a column, Joe, that was titled "Nate Oats Takes Shots at Best Player, but Will It Work?" Obviously talking about Mark Sears, right? And after the game, Oats said, and you quote him in your article, he said, quote, we got to have better leadership this year. We'll see what type of maturity and leadership we have, end quote. And Joe, you wrote, this was a direct shot at Mark Sears, who Oats obviously benched earlier in the season, very publicly, very controversially against LSU. And then later in the piece, you also quote Oats, you say, quote, or he says, quote, We got to play hard when the shots aren't dropping. It's a sign of high character guys. And he was critical of Sears' ISO possessions, his shot selection. I mean, you said that this was all a motivational play, and he's publicly made an example out of Mark Sears a couple of times this season. What do you make of Nate Oats' approach to this?
I don't think you really need to be that critical of Mark Sears. Okay, he's a senior. He's an All-American. He made it to the Final Four last year. His numbers are way down. They are. His numbers are down. If you go look at his advanced stats, I mean, the only number that's not down for him is his usage rate. Okay, his usage rate is up, and all of his percentages are down. Like his win share per 40 minutes this year compared to last year is like half of what it was. They're just not getting as efficient production as they want from that guy. But it's not really all his fault. He's having to do a lot. Um, also they need more out of Stevenson. They got to get more out of Jared Stevenson. He's your 5-star guy, okay? He's the guy that you got from North Carolina, right out of Chapel Hill. You had one of your backup players leave the team and go to Michigan because he wasn't going to get the minutes that he wanted because Stevenson was the guy. And so you got to have more out of that guy. He's got to do more.
Yeah.
And Stevenson, Nelson had a quiet double-double. He had the stats, but he was kind of quiet.
I don't think Nelson was there. A lot of the guys weren't exactly the problem on Saturday. I think ultimately they started to lay an egg. And when they were down 14 points, it looked like it was going to get really ugly really fast. So credit to the team. I mean, credit to the coaching staff for pulling Alabama out of the dirt and tying the game late, giving them a chance to win, getting some momentum, winning the crowd back. They got really into it. It was a great atmosphere. But ultimately, I think it was more about what Auburn did than it was about Alabama. Yes, they shot poorly, but again, you've got to credit Auburn's defensive scheme against them and the way Auburn was shooting the ball and just finding open shots, and maybe the way Alabama was failing to defend Auburn for that matter. And Oats has talked about lack of effort on defense from different guys individually. But you're right. I mean, there are other guys who have to step up. I mean, I think Mark Sears, he deserved a lot of credit for pulling Alabama back into it, hit a couple of big shots, but he's also really the only guy other than LeBaron Philon who I would personally trust to create his own shot, to make something happen, to create something for other players in terms of his ability to isolate, to drive and kick and find open shooters. And those guys have to knock down shots, and they've got to make plays too. And Jaron Stevenson's one of those guys who's going to have opportunities, but can he execute? I mean, he's one of those guys who's blowing layups at the rim. There was a big layup late in the game. Jaron Stevenson's got the ball under the goal, and he flat out misses it, right? So he's getting a lot of minutes. He's lengthy. He's pretty good on defense. He can contest, shooters, and he can give you a little bit of size, even though he's not a physical player at all. But you're right. He's got to step up. I thought Cliff from Murray had a pretty good game. I thought that Chris Youngblood, he's an effort guy of the highest order, but that guy's got to start hitting shots too.
He's Auburn's Chris Moore.
Yeah, I mean, Aiden Holloway was obviously a little discombobulated, maybe playing a little too emotionally on Saturday. Who knows? But yeah, you're right. I mean, Mark Sears' numbers were going to go down because he has a better roster than he did last year when he was asked to score 20 points a game. And so what is he getting? About 18 points, 5 assists per game. He's having a productive year if it wasn't quite as productive as 2024. But, I just think the approach to calling him out only goes so far. I mean, you already did that when you benched him. You made an example out of him. How much more you want to do that, I don't know.
He is who he is, man. He is who he is.
That's
not
true.
He's not going to take a magic pill and grow 3 inches, and he's not going to add 5 inches to his vertical and 5 inches to his wingspan. He is who he is. They got to get more from other places.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, though, because, I want to talk about Oats specifically. What did you think about when he got on the microphone to call out fans who were presumably, again, I didn't see this, throwing things out on the court? He, after the game, he called it asinine, right? Where if you're throwing anything on the floor, it certainly is. I don't disagree with him there. I didn't see anything get thrown. I mean, if it happened, which I'm sure it did, I missed it. But, then you say in the press conference, we ask our players not to do dumb things, and that cost us points. So we're also asking fans not to do dumb things that cost us points. It's okay, sure, I get it. But Oats, let's hold ourselves just as accountable, right? Like, how about when he didn't do it this game, but when he gets technical fouls during close games, like he's gotten many of them since he's been at Alabama that have cost his teams points in close games. And nobody has gotten onto a microphone to publicly address it and say, hey, Oats, maybe don't get a technical foul and cost your team any points in this game. But I just thought you don't see that very often, a coach getting on the mic. What did you make of that?
I like Nate Oats' blunt demeanor. Okay, I really do. You just as a reporter,
of course, we're in the fake news, so like we love that.
I
right?
appreciate his candor. I appreciate his honesty. He cuts to the truth, and it's like a very Michigan type of attitude that he has. Like this, we're looking at a coach. He's like he wants to be Tom Izzo, and he's coaching Alabama. Like that's who Nate Oats is. Okay, like you have to understand. I mean, could you imagine Whip Sanderson getting on the microphone? Yes, I could. Like, what would he say? You probably have to bleep it out. You probably have to.
I don't know, man. I thought it was funny. I mean, you see it a couple of times, especially like when people, I guess, are acting up. I feel like I've even seen it this year. Did you see anything get thrown on the
I didn't
floor?
see. I don't know. I didn't see anything. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Bruce just made it up. I have no idea. Okay.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, fans had a lot to say about Bruce Pearl throughout the game. What did you think of the atmosphere, like the vibe from the student section?
Yeah, it was great. Alabama students are incredible. You throw one thing on the court, okay, you get a pass. Just don't do it again. I don't like. And please don't like hit Chad Baker Mazara with a battery, okay? Like
a little I don't know if altercation's the right word, but a little moment there at the end with Chad Baker Mazara, right? Like where he bumps into, the stands, has a little back and forth with a fan at one point. Man, that guy is really interesting. He ends up fouling out after a review, right, where they give him a flagrant foul. But he was somebody that Oats and others were talking about going into the game, and he has a good game, shoots well for Auburn, makes plays, but obviously makes headlines too.
Chad Baker Mazara.
You love the guy.
I love him. He starts every game with 2 fouls. All right? It just like before the refs just go up to him and like, you can just count on 2 extra fouls, Chad. So you only got 3. So good luck.
Yeah, well, look, what chance do you give? Or let me start here, Joe. Like before we get to Auburn, the second Auburn game, and potentially a third, and maybe even a fourth. But in your column, you asked, did Alabama peak too soon? Right? Like you say, we're about to find out because Alabama plays 6 ranked teams to finish the regular season. It's a gauntlet, man. It's like the one of the realest gauntlets I've ever seen. What do you expect from Alabama during this stretch? How do they respond?
4-2.
That's pretty good.
No, that's good. It's going to be hard. Bones are starting to ache this time of year. I don't care how young you are. Like you play this schedule, it catches up to you. So, and that they're practicing really hard on Monday. Monday is going to be a grind for them practicing wise after that game against Auburn. So, I mean, and the teams kind of have the scouting report on Alabama at this point. Like, we're not going to let Mark Sears beat us. Try to beat us, Jaron. Try to beat us, Grant. Good luck. That's Alabama's big 3 right there. Like, that's who's supposed to be their big 3. It's supposed to be Mark Sears, Grant, Jaron. So they need a lot.
It's not going to be Jaron Stevenson. It's just not. Like, you want to say they are who they are this season. Like, he may give you a good game every 10 games. He can't shoot from the outside. He's not physical enough as an interior defensive presence. So he's he has things to offer where he can provide length on the perimeter. He can hit a shot every now and then. I think that when he does attack the basket, he's actually more productive as a scorer, but he doesn't do it very often, and it's obviously not how Oats wants to use him. But Alabama's going to get it scoring elsewhere. It's going to get it from Philon. It's going to get it from Holloway when he's having a good night and he's streaky at this point. Stevenson is not that guy.
I think that they need him to be that guy. I think that he has NBA potential and he needs to be that guy. Now, I don't know if Aiden Holloway does. Like, Aiden Holloway can hit a 3-pointer. But what does he give you defensively? Like there's a trade-off there when he's in the game. Filan, they really need a lot out of Filan. I mean,
Yeah.
they need him to come back from his ankle. And look at Pettiford for Auburn, what he's turned into. To me, Filan can be better than Pettiford. Like right now, Pettiford is on a heater. I mean, the kid he just goes unconscious at the end of games against good opponents. He did the same thing against Duke. I mean, Auburn lost that game, but I mean, he was great at the end of the Duke game. He was great at the end of the Alabama game. But they need that from Filan. They need him to affect the ball off the ball defensively the way he did at the beginning of the year before his ankle injury. And the offensive game will come, and they'll create offense for other players.
You talk about creative. LeBaron Filan is one of the most creative offensive players I've seen at Alabama in a long time. I mean, Estrada kind of had that last year, and he kind of came in, and I thought he's kind of like a better version of Aaron Estrada. Estrada turned out to be a little bit more consistent. He had a little bit more size, I think, and was maybe a little bit more physical. But Filan has just so much potential, and he is going. You're right. He's going to need to be one of those guys if they're going to make a deep run in March. Youngblood is going to have to take advantage of his opportunities when he's on the floor. I think Cliff O'Murray is a contributor. I think he's really good and has had a solid season so far. Darian Reed not being fully healthy right now, he's just a total question mark in terms of like what he's able to give Alabama with the limited minutes that he has. So not somebody I think that you can count on right now. So the guys that we've mentioned so far, the Holloways, the Filons, the Stevensons for that matter, a guy whose name we haven't said right now is Mo Diabate. I mean, that guy has emerged as a glue guy for Alabama. You talk about effort and toughness, grit, this whole blue collar mentality that Oats preaches about all the time. Diabate has emerged, and he's obviously aggressive on the scoring end too. This is not a guy who has been much of a scorer, but he has confidence in the post, and he was going at Broome in this game. So I think Diabate is somebody you can count on to at least give effort. That's what you need from the rest of the roster.
Yeah, he's an effort guy, but at the same time, he's 6'6", so he can kind of be overmatched a little bit. But I love him. The ball finds energy, and it often finds Diabate. And yeah, he's a guy that in a tournament, one single elimination type setting, like that's the kind of player that can be a difference. Guys who they're going to get the loose ball, they're going to get the block. Like that's the kind of guy he is. So at the end of the year, those guys really become their value becomes even more magnified.
So we talked about that gauntlet, Joe, but they go back to Auburn, or they go to Auburn on Saturday, March 8th, 1 p.m. I mean, you got to think Auburn stole one in Coleman Coliseum, and it could get ugly on the other side of the state. Do you give Alabama any sort of chance at Auburn?
They got to pay. Yeah, of course I do. I mean, Florida went in and won at Auburn. Alabama can go in and win at Auburn. The thing about playing at Auburn is if it's a night game, that actually favors, to me, that favors the opponents, because the kids have been camping out for like 3 days. They're all like washed out and tired. And by the time like the night game comes around, they're kind of flat, if I could call out Auburn's fans.
Yeah, they're going to love that.
Alabama's fans were a lot better against Auburn than Auburn's fans were against that game against Florida. Yeah. Yeah, just think about that. Think about that.
I will.
Also, let me say one thing that'll probably piss off Alabama fans, but I don't care. They need to hear it.
They're already pissed, Joe, but go ahead.
When your players miss free throws at home, do not let out this audible gasp like it's the end of the world. Like that does not help the vibe. Like, I know it's a free throw. They should make them. Blah, 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 whatever. You're going to miss them, okay? Don't freak out like it's the end of the world. Like, that just kind of set the mood for me. Like, it was very tense. So Auburn went up. Alabama, they had to struggle to get back into the game. But then when they would go to the line and they would miss a free throw, the entire crowd would be like, "Oh my God!" Like, just hold it in.
Don't count, man. You got
hold it in. Hold it in.
You need them all, man. You know how many free throws they missed, don't you?
Yeah.
They missed 9 free throws. What was the difference in the game? 9 points. They all matter, Joe. You're hanging on to every free throw with bated breath.
You just keep it in.
Oh, well, how about when Auburn would make free throws? They do that like clapping thing and say AU. What did you think of Alabama's response to that? Were you impressed by that at all?
I really loved the banter between the two fan bases. Yeah. It was really good. It was excellent. Everything they were saying, all the fat shaming, that was funny. Okay.
Pretty par for the course. Whenever
all the F-bombs, that's fine. You know, that's fine. I don't care,
man. That's what you need. All right. Well, last thing, Joe, is Alabama still a contender this year? Was this just a one-off game? Did they show you anything to suggest that, like from a depth standpoint, defensive standpoint, turnover standpoint, even though that stat was better this game, did they show anything to you that says they're going to fall short this year? Or do you think that they still have everything that they need to make a deep run?
I mean, you can't win them all, college basketball, you know?
Yeah.
Of course they can make in the NCAA tournament, it's all about matchups. Like, look who Alabama matched up with last year. Like, they had a really good road to the Final Four. So, nah, you can't say that they're not a contender. They're absolutely one of the top 4 contenders in the country. So,
long way to go. Huge stretch coming up. Alabama next plays at Missouri this Wednesday in Columbia. They're going to play number 17 Kentucky, number 21 Mississippi State, and then it just gets even worse at number 6 Tennessee. They welcome number 2 Florida, and then they go to Auburn.
It's incredible. It's incredible. I mean, what a month of basketball.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be fun to watch.
And then you get the SEC tournament.
Yeah.
Which is just going to be a party. Yeah.
This SEC tournament. Well, you're going to be there. He's Joe Goodman, sports columnist for AL.com. Go read his stuff. Joe, thanks as always for doing this, man. You're doing an awesome job.
Okay, thanks.
All right, find Beat Everyone on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. We will see you next time.